over to my Twitter and retweet it. But otherwise, click play.
System, the company store, the paradigm of absolute control. And that's why we're just out here doing simple things, pointing out that we're meant to be in nature and be natural. And this is where we find the source that God made to transcend the New World Order. And that's why they want to try to keep us out of it.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murderers scum. They're on giant death factories keeping babies alive. You're selling their body parts. What more do you need to know about these people? I go out and face these scum. They literally crawl out from under rocks. They have green looking skin and they run around screaming, we love Satan, we want to eat babies. I have them on video. Hillary's in the creepy, weird, sick stuff, man. She sleeps in the same room with that creepy, weird woman whose mother wears a hood over her head. That woman number one is ugly. Imagine how bad she smells, man. I'm told her and Obama just stink. Obama and Hillary both smell like sulfur. Literal vampire pot belly goblins hobbling round coming after us. My spirit gets close to that evil and I feel it go. We're such self-centered crap. We don't even notice hell itself rising up against us. Millions of pointed people of the very worst type, and I'm so pissed. We're gonna stab your daughter at the mall. We're gonna stab your wife, your son. We're gonna stab you with a butcher knife, and then the police chief is gonna say, we love our Somalis, we love our Muslims. Oh, they're so good. Oh, they're so sweet.
Things that you can do on a live stream
I worked out
when you're
morning.
hang on.
Things you
I'm
can
back
do
in.
on a live stream.
Things you can do on a live stream when you work in Bitcoin.
Alex Jones was ahead of his time. He was also behind the times, but
yeah, I mean, you know, some definite misses.
couple
Andy
whips.
Hook, we won't talk about that. But
you only remember you call 5 incredible Hail Marys and you whiff one.
but so to your point, Charlie, the reason I wanted to lead with that is love him or hate him, defamation aside, Alex Jones was one of the first commentators to really be talking about this stuff, and so you got to give him a shout out, because today's show is going to be, it's a live stream, special live stream. Might rip this, put it on the RSS. We don't know yet, but we are going to be covering some of the intersection of the Epstein files and Bitcoin, the Venn diagram you didn't know you needed.
Oh, the Venn diagram got real big this past week. Now, a lot of people kind of already knew there were some touch points, but you had to hang out. You had to listen to like your Mark Goodwins. You had to spend a little time on the Bcash subreddit to get a little of that conspiracy in, to kind of know that these things existed. But now it's time. But there's like no new people, like new main characters have entered Bitcoin. Michael Saylor, who catch strays in this Epstein files. And we'll say there's several people in here who, incidentally, I like have a conversation with every other week or so. And a couple of these people I would consider like the friends in the industry type thing. So yeah, I'm honestly a little bummed that I wasn't in it. I feel like everybody was getting an Epstein file list. I was just a little bit too late. If I'd been in earlier, and I could have been emailing Epstein asking for money.
You might have solicited an investment from Epstein
Exactly.
for a Bitcoin mining operation or something.
Exactly.
Before we get into this, I do want to just highlight that point, and we'll get to the juicy stuff here in a second. But I think that there is a mental framework flaw that a lot of people have when they're thinking about the Epstein files, where if your name shows up, it automatically means that you were involved in some of the most heinous shit that anyone in our government or anyone in our society has ever done. I just want to go out and say right now, I'm not going to be making any allegations of that kind in this, nor will Charlie. We were just going to be reading what's coming from the files. I would say, though, an important thing to remember, and this is part of the reason why I think Bitcoin and a lot of these characters enter the conversation with Epstein, is that Epstein was publicly facing a financier first and foremost. People were always coming to him looking for money, and he was interested in getting his dirty little fingers into bleeding edge technology, hence Bitcoin. In fact, he was interested about it as early as 2011 when he ostensibly met with Gavin Andreessen. We will cover that later on in the pod. But just because someone's name shows up in here doesn't mean they were implicated in any pedophilia or the all of the awful things that are associated with
It's
Epstein.
unfortunate because that disclaimer will absolutely be lost by, like, I'm just gonna say it, over half of like the Bitcoin pleb audience. I don't know if you've been looking at Twitter. There's a few people who are like, "Oh my gosh, you emailed Epstein asking him if a pretty innocuous question. Are you a pedo? Like, answer for this." And I'm gonna sound a lot like a white knight here, trying to defend like folks, and I'm open to criticism and counter, but like I think a lot of the people who are terminally online cannot possibly imagine that high agency people who are interacting in a very like narrow space where only a few people have money and even demonstrated interest in the type of thing you're doing, you're going to cross pollinate a lot. And Epstein was charged, convicted with sex trafficking in '08, and that was known. So that was a thing.
Prostituting a minor.
Prostituting a minor. But I will say, like, Epstein was not this household name in the early 2010s, and Epstein went to great lengths to like downplay and obfuscate that, so much as like if you were to go to his Wikipedia, it like I understand that it wasn't like prominently displayed. And then also think about like you still have like a lot of this stuff which is not written in emails, which is like social like deference, like this person who say in charge of your department has a long-standing relationship with him, and like, yeah, he's the guy, you should talk to this person, he's really smart, he's got money, finance and stuff like this. Like, if you're a young college student and leading a student initiative at this young new internet money thing, you're not really as much in a position of like choosing who you get. You're not really in a position to like choose all of your counterparties. And so
important context. We're not simping or standing Epstein, obviously, but there are people that we know and that have shown up in these files, and we just want to dispel any idea that they necessarily were involved with any wrongdoing on that side. We'll get to that in a second. To Charlie's point, 2008, he was convicted of sex crimes in Florida. A lot of that was buried. Most of this didn't enter the Overton window, honestly, until probably shortly before his death, I would say. It was
really because he died, finger quotes, in 2019 when 2019 was the year he didn't kill himself. And like the year preceding that, I believe, right, he was like convicted, he was on trial, and then he went to jail, and then he immediately didn't kill himself after he went to jail. And so that is kind of when he went from this niche thing where you kind of had to like be always like scoping out who you're talking to
you had to
it being like a household name and global meme.
I think the Epstein conspiracy was very much on the fringe up until probably around, like you said, a year or two before his untimely passing, his total definitely a suicide. Anyway, we'll go ahead and hop into this. Just a little bit of a disclaimer and also some background before we started. I want to start with probably the biggest headline to come out of this for most people, I think, so far. Hat tip to the team at Decrypt and Sander Lutz, who is their politics reporter. Jeffrey Epstein was an early investor in Coinbase, emails reveal. So per this article, and we'll pull up the actual filing here in a second, Jeffrey Epstein invested $3 million in Coinbase in 2014, according to emails released by the DOJ. Coinbase's co-founder Fred Ursum was aware that the investment was being made on Epstein's behalf. Emails show, again, for Charlie's point, this is 6 years after he's convicted in Florida of sex crimes, specifically recruiting a child for prostitution. And the deal was arranged by Tether co-founder Brock Pierce and Blockchain Capital.
Ooh,
at a $400
that's
million
a name
valuation.
that's a name we will like dunk on. By the way,
We will dunk on this, and we will return to this because Brock Pierce, we'll cover him next. But he, as far as I can tell from what I've done combing through the Epstein files, he was the primary touch point for Epstein with the universe of Bitcoin startups at the time. If a Bitcoin startup took money either directly or indirectly from Epstein, probably Brock Pierce was the nexus point for that transaction. So going to the filing really quickly here. Let me get this up just so we can show we're not making this up.
I'm making this up.
There are a lot of AI edited images out here with the Epstein files. So like I really urge anyone, if you see something on the internet, just go check it for yourself. And you're like, oh, how am I going to comb through 20,000 documents, dude? Amazingly enough, I was telling Charlie this, the search function for these files on the DOJ website is the best I've ever seen from a government. I'm honestly amazed that the government did this.
It's suspicious how well the search function works. That's a conspiracy, which is the government made it too easy to search the Epstein docs. And what do they want us to know?
I know exactly.
I also like to say, like, Colin, remember, like, I want to rephrase what Colin said, which is, if you see something on the internet which you suspect is fake, go make sure the government says it's true. Yeah, in the words of Colin.
Oh my God, that's really good. Okay, so here is the email chain related to this Coinbase investment, and as you can see here, let me see, get it right here. Okay, from Josh Pollock, who is involved in the investments, I assume, for Epstein. I didn't take the time to research every single person that are in these chains; it'd take too long. But this shows that Cryptocurrency Partners, which is Brock Pierce's investing, is Brock Pierce's crypto fund. So I think that's an important thing to point out here, and we'll get into that here in a second. But Epstein was basically funneling money into Brock Pierce's funds, which were then allocated towards some of these startups at the time, right?
Also, remember Brock Pierce, you may know him as the EOS guy, but Brock Pierce, formerly child actor starring in The Mighty Ducks. So
that's really a good context.
The same Brock Pierce.
It's true. It seems it too retarded.
Like we made that up.
Yeah, it seems like we made that up, but the simulation slaps sometimes, y'all. So
yeah.
Anyway, so through Cryptocurrency Partners, again, we'll get back to that in a second. They purchased a total of 195,910 shares for $3.25 million in 2014. Let's just double check. Yeah, this was about, it looks like December 2014 is when this deal was closed. Now, funnily enough, Brock Pierce, Blockchain Capital. So Blockchain Capital is the partner, is like the name of the general partner for that fund. The fund itself is called Cryptocurrency Partners. They tried to purchase this stake from Epstein, and I don't know if they succeeded, but if you look at this email chain, they come back in January 2018, on the downside, or at the beginning of the downside of that bull market, asking to purchase that stake back from Jeffrey Epstein for something like $11 million. So I think that is probably so far one of the bigger headlines for this. And just going back to it again, there's this idea that anything that touches Epstein is automatically implicated in this global pedophile cabal, right? Fact of the matter is Epstein was, again, public facing, a financier first. A lot of these Bitcoin and crypto companies in the early stages, getting an investment like that at a time when Bitcoin was not taken for granted as succeeding.
I mean, getting a $500,000 investment today is a big deal.
Yeah, right. And so, given the fact that Epstein was interested in early stage technologies, because like if you go is like let's say that you buy fully into the entrapment scheme idea that like the whole point is not just a global pedophile ring to blackmail the most powerful people in the world. It's also an attempt to shuffle money around into things and kind of influence through investments bleeding edge technologies of that sort, right?
I have to highlight a comment from WONDA. Yo, bro, what the hell is going on? I agree.
Crazy shit, man.
Crazy shit, man.
Basically, Epstein tried to get involved in anything that you could imagine is kind of the takeaway. And again, I just want to stress this. People interacting with him at the time, not necessarily bad actors. You can point out that he had convictions in 2008, and there are some scruples there for sure for people who are interacting with him. But I just want to get that out of the way. We're not making any claims that any of these people are actually implicated in the most heinous parts of what Epstein represents. Anyway, I want to go and talk about Brock Pierce for hopefully not too long. But again, he is key to understanding Epstein's entrance into all of these investments, I think, because without Brock Pierce, I don't think that he would have had the intros that he would have that Epstein had, because Brock Pierce was super well connected. So where to start? Let's go ahead and just pull up this deck really quickly. So the paper trail for blockchain capital is it's scattered all over these files. I wasn't able to pull anything super definitively outside of a few things in terms of how much money was put into blockchain capital from Epstein. But if you go through the filings, you will see that blockchain capital and cryptocurrency partners, this is the same entity for our purposes here, was sending Epstein their decks for 2014 and 2015, showing the returns on some of the investments that they made. Also, Gavin Andresen listed as chief scientist there. We'll come back to Gavin in a little bit. That's interesting there. Of course, Brock Pierce just pumping himself up here as a serial entrepreneur, talking about
serial entrepreneur, even as far back as 2011.
I know, and like all these things, like crypto, like none of these. Do any of these exist anymore? None of these. I guess maybe Noble Markets.
Zoom Hash seems familiar. Xfire. Oh, is that Xfire that I'm thinking of?
Yeah, but that's non-crypto investments.
Tether.
Yeah.
Wait, did he already found Tether as like?
So that is an interesting thing. He's not listed, right, as a founding. That's messy.
Like he had like his grubby little paws in something which became Tether. I don't know. This is a Mark Goodwin question.
Yeah, he was he claims to have invented Tether in the sense that he came up with the idea for the first stablecoin. How much he was involved in the actual, the grind of getting it off the ground, I can't speak to here, but I'll fact check myself on that a little bit later. But so if you go through the files, you see that like as early as 2014, they were sent. This is from February 2014. This deck, he was sending Epstein information about the company. Also in 2015, and going back to the idea that he was a touch point for Epstein with the industry. This is a July 2015 email that said, "Good, I have something else for you now too. Can you talk?" Who knows what that's referring to? I'm going to assume that something else is another investment for Jeffrey to look at. It seems like, at least in the beginning, Pierce's primary interest in Epstein was to get him connected to people in the Bitcoin and crypto space for investments. How far it goes beyond that, I don't know. There are some there are some pretty strange emails like this one where he says lawyer should retain Allen, which I think is another lawyer. Brock was going to Epstein for advice on legal counsel. I don't know if this is related to EOS, because as most of you might know, EOS ran the longest ICO in history. I don't know if it's related to other things. All according to what, quote, this is, let's talk instead of email. So like whatever this is, if it can't be on email, it's probably something kind of crazy, or it could just be mundane. Who knows? Could be Brock Pierce didn't want to get sued for launching a perpetual ICO in the US and selling it to US investors.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's another thing that does come up too. So
Yeah, EOS does come up in this quite a
and
lot.
like the ethics and legal gray area of digital assets.
Yeah, and it seems like from some of these, Pierce was trying to get him to invest in EOS. He was really like pushing it as something really interesting. But anyway, who knows? Interestingly enough, going back to the ties between Epstein and blockchain capital, there's this really curious bank transaction report from Deutsche Bank. There are a few of these in a lot of the filings are there are multiple copies. I don't know what that is. In fact, some of them, the redactions are actually messed up. So you can go through and see the second filing or the third filing for the same document, and redactions will be moved around. So if you're trying to kind of sleuth around who said what to whom, that's one option. But this is a transaction record from Deutsche Bank, from Leon Black and the Rothschild groups, as well as transactions involving hedge funds and investment funds that were related to Epstein. I'm going to caveat this by saying I wasn't able to confirm whether or not these are specifically funds that are explicitly tied to Epstein. But if you look through this, I assume they are, but I could be wrong on that. But if you look here in February of 2018, there are multiple payments to from Blockchain Capital to what's called the 2017 Caterpillar Trust. I think going back to the emails about the original Coinbase investment, I think this is Blockchain Capital buying back that investment, because if you go through that, they offer 11 million, I think, and then they end up settling on 15 million to buy back those shares of Coinbase from Epstein in 2018. So I can't confirm, but I'm pretty sure that this is Blockchain Capital buying back those Coinbase shares in 2018, which, if they held on to them, great investment for them, because Coinbase is now valued, I think Decrypt said when they published that article, like $51 billion market cap. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else here before we move on, because I mean that's really the thing about this is I tried really hard to narrow the scope of some of the stuff we're bringing up in this, because if you go through and like keyword Brock Pierce or blockchain capital, there are like pages upon pages, dozens of pages of content to go through. But I do know that Brock Pierce was booking meetings with Jeffrey Epstein as late as 2017 and maybe 2018. I didn't see anything from 2019. Again, I could have missed it because there's a lot to comb through. But Brock Pierce had been meeting with him for a long, long time. And one interesting throwback to is that there is this really interesting meeting or this really interesting email from 2016 where Richard Kahn, one of the guys in Jeffrey's orbit, basically says, let me back up here. Where is this? Let me see. This is Richard Kahn writing to Brock Pierce. Said, "Good morning and thanks for taking the time yesterday to review Coinbase with me. I realized that if I were you, I would suggest to Steve Bannon that he talk privately with Jeffrey. As you know, Jeffrey knows more about international finance, yada, yada, yada." He glazes Jeffrey there for a second, try to make him sound like a genius. So, I mean, things on my bingo card for this year that I wasn't expecting is some crossover between Brock Pierce and Steve Bannon. But there we go. I mean, Steve Bannon's featured pretty prominently in the.
Steve Bannon was kind of towards the end of Jeffrey's career. Steve Bannon was kind of like working with him pretty closely, even so far as that last interview that Jeffrey had, which is now kind of going viral on the internet. That is Steve Bannon supposedly media coaching him. Okay, you've done a very good job trying to keep it focused. There's like a dozen people who have been mentioned, which are very notable in the Bitcoin ecosystem, which we do need to get to.
Yeah, let's touch on Gavin really quickly, just because as far as I can tell, this is the first like 2011 was kind of the inception of Epstein's involvement in Bitcoin. And just one thing,
okay.
one thing I wanted to just point out really quickly, just to close the loop on the Coinbase thing. I do believe that Deutsche Bank transaction was related to the Coinbase thing, because Brandon Stevens, the co-founder and managing partner of Blockchain Capital, says that they would pay $15 million for Jeffrey Epstein's Coinbase investment in 2018. That's how much they paid to that 2017 Caterpillar Trust or whatever. Could be unrelated, but seems like it might match up. Okay. On to Gavin real quick.
On to Gavin. And so it's funny, like you and I know who Gavin is, but I would say the average Bitcoiner, no clue who Gavin is.
Yeah, can you give people a rundown of who he is?
Yes, I might need to pull up his bio, but from memory, the high level is he's an ex-Google engineer who worked on Bitcoin very early, and Satoshi informally or kind of formally handed the project over to Gavin Andresen to act as informal leader. So Gavin, for a couple years after Satoshi left, basically acted as the front man, lead maintainer, if you will. Before Bitcoin Core had came to exist, which I'm absolutely just playing into the conspiratards. Listen to this, but yeah, Gavin was like the guy, and then he famously rage quit Bitcoin.
And you know what? When we're looking at this, it's hard to think. Like, it's hard not to see why that might have happened, because, you know, to back up really quickly on this, Gavin got contacted by the CIA in 2011, and he has this famous Bitcoin Talk forum post where he refers to himself in the third person first, which is, I think, hilarious. Says Gavin will visit the CIA. He says, and I quote from this post, this is on April 27th, 2011, "I want to get this out in the open because it is the kind of thing that will generate conspiracy theories, and damn right it did.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a presentation about Bitcoin at CIA headquarters in June at an emerging technologies conference for the U.S. intelligence community." And this really did spark a bunch of conspiracy theories. I think if you look at like the Bcash and like Bitcoin SV camps, this was used as this is cited as proof that Bitcoin is co-opted by the CIA to this day. But for the purposes of this live stream, the tie-in here is that Jeffrey Epstein was setting up a meeting with Gavin in June of 2011, shortly after that meeting with the CIA in April, or maybe it was May when it or he said it was in June that he was meeting with him. So I don't know if this occurred concurrently, after, or before the meeting with the CIA. But he says on this email, it says Gavin Andresen to see Jeffrey Epstein on Friday or Saturday. So that's the only thing in there about that, in terms of like, there's no hard or explicit confirmation that they met, but that's the closest we get. And I think safe to assume that they did. The other really interesting thing is one of the publicists in Epstein's orbit, John Brockman, who is an editor at the New Scientist. And on that note, when you go through these emails, we're going to touch on another publicist when we talk about Michael Saylor in a little bit. There are all of these publicists, media, and PR people who are in Epstein's orbit. And if you're ever wondering how agenda setting works, you're getting a little glimpse into the agenda setting and framing tactics that are used by elites and the powerful, the powers that be, to agenda set and to frame narratives. But on that note, maybe of framing narratives, what was interesting is John Brockman emailed Gavin in June, shortly before he allegedly met with Epstein. Gavin did, saying, quote, "I've been following the developments about Bitcoin with interest. Although it's early and perhaps premature, if you have any interest in eventually writing a book about your activities for a trade audience, I would like to talk to you about it. Our reputation as a literary agency is for working with serious authors and translating their ideas and information into successful commercial books, which we license directly to publishers in the global marketplace." So I don't really know what to make with that, other than going back to, if you look at Epstein, if you look at the whole Epstein ring as not just a way to blackmail elites and politicians, You can also look at it potentially as a way to exert influence into a number of spheres, including technology. And I don't know what that book would have done, but if you look at some of these, kind of New York Times bestsellers, not all of them, but a lot of them are trying to push certain narratives. And so I wonder how much of that was them trying to maybe get ahead of a narrative for Bitcoin. It's interesting nonetheless. It doesn't seem like Gavin really gave Brockman the time of day on that, though. And there's a few other things like Jason Calacanis. Apparently, I think it seems like Jason Calacanis was the first one to introduce Jeffrey to the idea of Bitcoin. And this is this is the last thing I'll say on this, and then I'll pass it over to you, Charlie.
Yeah.
But this is a June 4th, 2011 email that says, we'll dig up their info. I assume that's the Bitcoin guys that Jeffrey Epstein mentions in an email where he says, I would like to get in touch with the Bitcoin guys. He said, so these are folks who are not trying to build a business. They are the crazy open source folks who are radicals. Their motivation is more in line with WikiLeaks or Wikipedia. So kind of interesting thing there.
I mean, I guess, and you didn't mention it, but you have Amir Taki in there, who is one of the earliest contributors to Bitcoin. In fact, was he like the first person to get a commit in? Besides, so I don't actually know this. He was very early, and he went to fight in the Syrian civil war, and then he came back. And now he's kind of very angry at a lot of things in Bitcoin, and is building kind of privacy stuff. So
and Jason Calacanis refers to Gavin Andreessen as the tech lead and Amir Taki as escrow guy. I don't know what that means.
I don't know. Maybe they're making payments with Bitcoin. I don't know.
I'm not really sure what he's pointing out with that. If anyone does, please let me know.
Yeah. So do we want to go into the MIT thing now? Because that's another major.
Yeah, I think that's really important because MIT Media Lab's director, Joy Ito.
I wish I knew how to say his name.
I say maybe it's Ito. Joy Ito. I apologize for butchering it. He resigned from the MIT lab in 2019 based on his correspondence with Epstein that were released.
Let me get some context in.
Yeah.
So, early 2010s, like the world of Bitcoin or anything blockchain or crypto, still not really embraced by the academic establishment. Frankly, still isn't. But MIT very early on spun up under the MIT Media Lab, like some student group initiatives. I think the most notable is the MIT Bitcoin Club, and this is where Jeremy Rubin gets introduced. Young student at MIT who kind of, as I understand it, probably takes upon himself to spearhead. Like, he's enthusiastic, he's idealistic about changing the world of technology, particularly Bitcoin. And they notably even airdrop Bitcoin to all of a bunch of MIT students. And so through this, apparently Jeffrey Epstein, because you've got to meet the kids with their most impressionable, very involved with MIT, particularly the MIT Media Lab, funded and financed a lot of donations, which have become the subject of a lot of criticism, scrutiny, warranted criticism, scrutiny since. So Jeffrey becomes kind of like the guy who I guess you go to and bounce stuff off of. And so we have a lot of emails between Jeremy and Jeffrey, as introduced by Joy and probably some other people. And if I say something's wrong, and for any of the folks, please forgive me.
It's a lot of information to juggle, and we're bound to misspeak on a few things. That's why we're going to try to get the primary source stuff as much as possible. And to what Charlie's saying, though, it seems like Joy Ito, again, former head of MIT Media Lab, introduced Jeremy Rubin to Jeffrey Epstein in June 5th, on June 25th, 2014. Prior to this, on June 7th, 2014, Joy was asking Jeffrey if he, quote, should spend $120K of the money in the CCC account to fund the 2 kids who are running the Bitcoin club. He will fund them for a year. They're pretty funny and awesome. Not sure if some of that 120K ended up going to that airdrop of Bitcoin. That is mentioned in here too, of taking $100 worth of Bitcoin and airdropping it to various students on the MIT campus. I don't know if it's all of them or like ones that are involved in the tech stuff or the media lab. But the 2 kids that he's talking about running the Bitcoin club are Jeremy and I'm sorry, I don't know the other one. Richard. Do you know who the other one is?
Not off the top of my head.
Someone who's not as, I assume, public facing anymore, if at all, at any point. But going back to what Charlie was saying, Jeffrey Epstein put roughly $125,000 into MIT, or gave MIT $825,000, of which $525,000 went to the MIT Media Lab. So again, some of this went to fund who knows what. Some of it seemed to have gone to some of the Bitcoin stuff at MIT Lab. And it just goes back to, again, trying to keep his fingers in the pies of things that might be worth exploiting later on. And one last note really quickly, I just thought was really interesting is Jeremy sent Jeffrey Epstein his 2014 MIT thesis.
Which I think is kind of cool because, like, I mean, you imagine, like, this is, kind of the guy who commands all soft power. There's a lot of the funding for your, like, a department that's really relevant to you. It's just kind of funny that, it's just funny that people we know and like Jeremy have these, like, touch points from a decade ago.
Yeah, and I think going back to what we've been saying, you're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed MIT super genius kid, and you have this thesis about distributed systems like Bitcoin and how they might be able to improve financial conditions for people or improve certain financial processes and systems. And this guy's super freaking wealthy. He's already given a decent chunk of money to the club that you run at MIT. So you're going to send him your thesis because you want him to maybe bankroll you to do other things or fund some of the projects that you're working on. So it makes sense to me why he would be pursuing this. But
yeah. And then you have, like, a little bit later, you have some back and forth, which we can get into in a second, with Jeffrey asking about this new company called Blockstream, and bouncing things off Jeremy, and Jeremy saying, here's what I think, this is a pretty good company. Like, if you want to bet on a company in this space, there's a privately owned company, and, like, theoretically its success could track that of Bitcoin. Like, you want to invest in the sector as a whole. And there's a hilarious section there where in that interaction, do I even have it linked somewhere? Where yeah. This is one of my favorite memes. One of my favorite goofy like idiosyncrasies, which is Jeffrey is asking like about Jeremy's opinion on certain things, and Jeremy's like, well, or no, Jeffrey says, I'm happy to fund things, but I am high profile, and I want to avoid the appearance of pump and dumps, crypto pump and dumps, because I'm concerned about questionable ethics. And so I like to say, even shitcoin pump and dumps weren't above board for Jeffrey Epstein.
the most infamous serial pedophile of modern
all
times or ever.
Even he
doesn't want to pump shit coins.
Yeah.
Flying kids out to an island in the middle of the Caribbean, that's fine, that's great, but can't put money into speculative crypto bets.
So there's that. I got a little sidetracked. What was I talking about?
You brought up Blockstream, and I think it's a good time to go into that really quickly. So we'll go ahead and just get ahead of this and put Adam Back's tweet on here. It's kind of funny.
Well, you can get ahead of it. Can I actually? you can say get ahead of it. I do want to do a little bit of due diligence and point to the listeners to the other point of view, which is this documentary from the Bcash folks called "Who Killed Bitcoin." I believe that this is unfounded conspiracy. However, I want to point you to that because it's worth a watch. Because these people have been pounding, they've been ringing the bell on this thing for a long time. So you should go listen to that because I think they get to take a little victory lap. I think that it is mostly conspiracy, but that's probably a long conversation that I want to be recorded on. So, so yeah, I'll go back to. We can go back to you now. So
Yeah.
Adam,
So, I think it's funny how after the files got released, anyone who was involved in it, who wasn't probably involved in it in any sort of, scandalous capacity, kind of had these mea culpas on Twitter where they're like, back in blah, 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 I met with blah, 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 Epstein, or emailed Epstein soliciting him for investment, but we didn't have any other, and Adam Back had this yesterday. He tweeted this out at 1:12 p.m. my time, East Pacific time over here. But he said in 2014, during Blockstream seed round investor roadshow, the company was introduced to then MIT lab director Joy Ito. I can't pronounce it. Joy Ito. Subsequently, Blockstream met with Jeffrey Epstein, who was described at the time as a limited partner in Ito's fund. That fund later invested a minority stake in Blockstream. A few months later, Ito's investment fund divested its Blockstream shares due to a conflict of interest and concerns. Blockstream has no direct or indirect financial connection with Epstein or his estate. And the paper trail for this investment,
there's a decent paper trail. And it's mostly Jeffrey Epstein just talking in like about Adam as a person. Oh, we're gonna meet Adam. Oh, we're gonna do this thing with Adam. I like this guy, Andy Back.
yeah, there are some emails about it, but there's also a transaction record going back to those Deutsche Bank transactions, and there is a transaction in September 2014 by Southern Financial LLC. Again, all of these, if you peel back the onions here, there are layers of shell companies and funds that money was shuffled into. Some of those are like are third party ones, probably like Blockchain Capital, run by Brock Pierce, right? But on some of them might be actually directly Epstein related, as in like he and his cronies set them up. That being said, though, one Southern Financial LLC sent a $500,001. That's a strange amount. I don't know if that's like it's above
usually,
a certain
it's often
threshold.
like if we're each going to put 500K in, then I want to have like minor controlling interest. It's often like that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, so this records a $501,000 wire transfer to Jochi Ito, and then there is a footnote there that says wire details read Subir to Kiara Investments 3 LLC to fund Blockstream investment. So according to that, it's at least $500,000 invested into Blockstream at the time. But as Adam Back claims, that was divested by Joy later after a conflict of interest. Who knows what the true story is there? But fact of the matter is, there is the paper record for that. And again, going back to this and the Coinbase investment, obviously it's unfortunate and it's a bad look for these companies in Bitcoin. But these investments appear to be early stage companies looking for anyone to buy into their crazy cypherpunk Bitcoin shit, right? And it just happens to be that the worst person or the worst person you've heard of was on the other end of one of those investments. I think that does it for that. Do we want to go? Do we want to do Giga Chad next? Is that
who's Giga Chat? Oh, Sailor. Yeah. Well, I'll just say like, shoot, do I have like a link to one of the Adam comments? I will say this, Jeffrey Epstein, this is me recounting what I remember of the stuff I've read. Jeffrey Epstein liked Adam. He seemed like a sharp guy. I think Adam spent a little time with Epstein talking through some stuff. And so you do have that, but it all seems pretty above board, but yeah, There is conspiracy. There's a lot of conspiracy about this, and you can go read that for yourself. It's mainly in the world of
Yeah,
Bitcoin Cash and Blockstream
he-
control of Bitcoin world.
here's one of those. He's asked for his opinion. He said, like him. Also, if like Jeffrey Epstein's communication style is so enigmatic. I think someone described it on X I saw recently as evil E. E. Cummings. And it's like the perfect explanation I can find. Just like absolutely bizarre and honestly deranged patterns and syntax. Like he will just randomly put multiple spaces and then a comma and
Are
then
you
multiple
sure that
more
okay,
spaces.
that could be like something to do with like the export of the emails or something,
Yeah,
but
maybe because you see like equal signs in certain places where like a
yeah,
character for
that
whatever
has to do
reason
with
didn't port
something to do with
over.
like the rendering of like pulling these out. Um, all in like the old like formatting CSS, if you will, of like emails and stuff. I will just say like even that the emails are surprise. I can't remember the last time I sent any emails like this. It's just what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
uh when I send an email, it has a whole fucking like intro, exposition. Maybe I'm emailing wrong. Maybe that's my problem.
No, I
Maybe
think that this is a hallmark of people who are in communication with way too many people and are too
yeah.
busy. Like you respond with the simplest thing and the shortest
Yeah.
thing.
It's
And
really
you don't care about pissing people off or sounding curt because everyone's coming to you,
yeah, I
right?
could see that. Like your email inbox is blowing up. You almost treat it like text. You're doing really brusque, quick, fast, direct, like statements. I get that. It also reads like evil, evil EE coming.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, apparently, boom. Like, I would say maybe some like the high functioning boomers may email like this. Some of the boomers that I've emailed who are like high like CEOs actually do kind of communicate like this. Maybe it is like a pathology. So
yeah. Who can say? But all right, I think
okay.
this is a good place maybe to close. Although we didn't
Oh
touch
my
on.
God, no, we can't close. Let's do another. Let's just a little bit more. We got to do a little bit more. Like we can do. We
Oh
can
no,
squeeze
I
it.
was gonna say Sailor would be good to close on, but we'll touch on one tweet from Kyle Torpy before we
Oh yeah, we do have to do the chain code one.
yeah, but we'll go ahead and do Sailor because this is just this is the best ever. So all right, I'm gonna do this chronologically to the best that I can because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure this is the chronology. So let me get these up really quickly. All right, so let's see. That's March. Yes. Okay. This is from Peggy Siegel to Jeffrey Epstein. Peggy Siegel is another publicist in the Epstein universe. I don't know exactly her function with Epstein. I only can speak to her in the context of this thing with Michael Saylor. But she said this is with regards to Michael Saylor and from Jim Coleman, someone that she taps for a take on Michael Saylor. He says, I don't know him that well. What I know is that he is a typical computer guy who's trying to break out into social acceptance. And Peggy Siegel says in her email to Epstein, in which she's relaying this information to him, this is the description of the guy that I told you about with the 160-foot Fed ship. I assume that's a yacht that Jim Coleman introduced me to at Elton John's party at the Oscars. You told me to charge $25,000 for a few lunches and or dinners. I am meeting him Tuesday. So what we know is that Saylor put down $25,000 for food for this independent filmmaker project Spring Gala on May 5th in 2010. He is listed here as the corporate chairman of the event. And if we fast forward to another email and leading up to the gala, you can see that Peggy Siegel says that he seems nice enough. Actually, I think this is the same one that we just did, but she says he seems nice enough. I didn't have any problems with him, but then we fast forward to the night of the gala or the day of the gala, and she emails Jeffrey Epstein, Peggy Siegel, giving her takes of how it went. And I'm just going to read this in full because it is crazy. Okay. Got tons of press, kids drinking $100 bottles of wine. and Michael Saylor giving $25,000 for food and the opportunity to get his name on invite and meet a hip group. Saylor is a complete creep. He has no personality, sort of like a zombie on a drug. We had smart directors sitting next to him in his idiot gorgeous date and could not get any conversation out of him except, I have a yacht and I'm taking it to Canada.
Not gonna lie,
I'm
that
just
freaking
imagining,
rules.
like, could you imagine just like Saylor sitting next to an absolute bombshell supermodel and someone asked him a question? So, Michael, how did you make your money? Oh, I have this yacht and I'm taking it to Cannes this year. Just total non sequitur, you know?
Bro, he probably doesn't know how to talk about anything except for Bitcoin. That's probably why he's so good at coming up with Bitcoin stuff. Because he just has to fill that void in his personality. A lot of us do it.
Right. And on the last note from Peggy on this, I walked him around and he was so weird that I even ran away from him. There is an obvious personal disconnect, and I don't think I can just take his money and deliver a better life because he has no feel for social behavior.
See,
I mean,
this has got Elon Musk vibe written all over it. Like
this is
autism, Reddit, terminally online guy. Like, yeah.
Just a brutal takedown from, I don't know about Peggy, but if she was carrying water for Jeffrey Epstein, a brutal takedown from some of the most heinous people in the world of the Giga Chad Michael Saylor.
The way they talk about people, because this is kind of weird how often Jeffrey and his cohorts, the inner circles, are talking about how they do and don't like people and the impressions of them. It's weird how attentive they are to like their evaluation of someone, and also they're little shits. Like they're gossipy little shitheads, and obviously that's probably part of how they build their circle of confidence. But
well, that's what's interesting about it, right? Is like there's something kind of twisted about the fact that you're trying to recruit people or keep people in your circle potentially for nefarious reasons or to leverage them to your benefit, and like, you know. If you're just a total awkward dude who hangs out with supermodels, like somehow like you just don't fit the bill because you don't have any of the charisma or the chutzpah to actually, inspire confidence in all the other people that you're bringing into this circle. But, if you're totally amoral, if you're a totally amoral predator, then that's fine. We'll let you in. It's just it's kind of strange to see that, taking scruples with him just not having any social skills, but someone who's gonna potentially do heinous things is totally fine. Anyway,
okay, we have two more non sequiturs, which I will be really quick on because I don't think they're as notable, but they are some of my favorite like weird curveball, unexpected things to find in the emails. The first one is we didn't do the chain code thing. Basically, Jeremy introduced the two chain code founders to Jeffrey Epstein back in like 14 or 15. Anyway, I think that probably gets filed into there's a lot of cross-pollination early back then.
Right.
One of my favorite unexpected ones was Anthony Popliano. Where is the Anthony Popliano email? Okay, here it is. Shoot, I've got to find it. Dang it. Oh my gosh.
Here, I can help.
Okay.
Bear with us, everyone.
Okay, here we go.
You got it?
Yeah, this is so we don't know. There's some suspicion this might not actually be Anthony Popliano or his real email, but this is kind of a hilarious copy pasta now. It seems like it reads like the Navy SEAL copy pasta. Unfortunately, it reads like that. It's like one of my favorite like weird strays that somebody's gonna catch here, which is this is 2020. So Epstein is finger quotes dead, and someone saying that they're Anthony Popliano emails Epstein's brother trying to kind of like blackmail or pressure them, saying, Mark, who's Epstein's brother, I have no doubt that you are a partner in your brother's case. You should go to prison. You cannot escape from me. You know that I can determine your crime. If I'm looking for money, I'm looking for my money. Give me $10,000 so I cannot text you again. Mark, I'm an IRGC informant, which is like the Israeli Regional Guard or something. I got my master's degree from military university affiliated with the IRGC. Suffice to say, you know that Trump had sex with a girl under the age of 18 on your brother's island. Trump assassinated an IRGC commander. They hate Trump. This is a doozy of an email, and one of my favorite. People will just forget about this hilarious email in years, but I just want to remark on it because it's a doozy of an email. And the other one,
it's so weird. It's weird because, like, again, and we don't know if this is actually Anthony Pompliano.
Yeah, we
like
don't.
just full disclaimer. This could be someone pretending to be him. This could be another Anthony Pompliano. I mean, it's not a very common name. We don't know, but the fact that the dollar amount that he's asking for is so, like, you are emailing the brother of one of the most notorious people on the not on the planet anymore. One of the most notorious people in the sphere of influence in the West, and you're threatening him for 10 grand, like.
It rules. Okay, here's another one. Here's another one. This is Brian Bishop, who is one of the notable, seasoned, longtime Bitcoin core contributors and co-founder of Custodia Bank with Caitlin Long. So Brian has an email where he's trying to pitch Jeffrey Epstein to raise money for his designer baby genetic editing startup. Where he's concerned about he wants to be mindful of secrecy and privacy and reputational risk, and he's concerned about like the legality of doing this in certain jurisdictions, Japan being a favorable place, he says. But basically, he wants to have a startup to practice genetic alteration for designer babies. It's pretty much what it sounds like. A lot of people think this is like some kind of gotcha, but I want to say that Brian Bishop has actually been really clear that this is just something that he does and has been interested in for years. So he's a self-described biohacker, likes these like genome ideas and projects. So weirdly enough, like, I don't consider this that much of a surprise or gotcha. In fact, I think he's referenced doing this. But the doozy,
It's a doozy.
this one's a doozy. We don't have much more time to talk about that. I think I do want to end on a really positive note. There's
a positive note?
Not a positive note. There's a take that I have that was just taked right before we hit record. Which is Jeremy Rubin is now public on this. And I think this is actually a pretty good way to wrap up, because I think this is kind of what we said at the outset, Colin, which is there's a lot of folks who talk with Epstein. And it's difficult to decipher the nuance. Anyway, so Jeremy Rubin says, I'm glad the emails are being released. I think they help shed light on who Epstein was and how he operated. Yes, I had some professional engagement with him through my Bitcoin work, though never exclusively. I've mostly worked independently throughout my career and have consulted for various organizations and individuals. I haven't commented much to date because I realized how little I actually knew, and it didn't feel right to share what are ultimately just my own speculations based on personal anecdotes. I hope the release of the emails brings us closer to justice for those harmed and a better understanding of the nature of corruption in our society. So I think that's a pretty fair treatment on it. Like, imagine what would you say if you were named in the Epstein files? And then, like, a lot of people say, well, why didn't you know? And I mean, how many people are you talking to that whenever you chat with them, you also do full lookups on like their criminal history? A lot of people assume that you should be doing full due diligence, and maybe you should. But you know, some people have said, like Brian Johnson here, yes, the live to be
Live
immortal
forever,
guy,
vampire man.
forever vampire man. He says that it just wasn't part of my algo at the time to check if somebody being intro to me was a registered sex offender. And then he also says that after he sensed something was off, he said Epstein seemed like a very dark person. So maybe some people were able to pick up on that. Maybe some people weren't. Maybe some people.
Yeah, I think 2017, 2018 might be a little late. I'm gonna give some grace if it's like 2014 and before that. I don't know about Brian Johnson. Who knows? But like at 2017 and 2018, like it was pretty firmly on a lot of people's radars. Anyway, that being said, though, I'm saying that about Brian specifically, not about Jeremy. I think Jeremy had a really good tweet there, and I think that ultimately that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Okay. We could keep going forever about this, but we have normal lives to go back to, where we don't stare into the void.
Can you go back after this?
I do avert my eyes from the Bitcoin chart and the big black hole of the internet on occasion. So I suggest you do too.
But if y'all enjoyed this, check out our newsletter for this Friday, in which we will be going over some of this in writing and digging up a few other things. If we find other new things that we didn't talk about here, we will be including them in that write-up. Basically just a TLDR of some of the most salient insights from the Epstein file dump as it relates to Bitcoin. You can subscribe to that at newsletter.blockspace.media. And otherwise, thanks for tuning in, guys. Appreciate y'all hanging in with us with this one. I know it's kind of all over the place, but
so is the Epstein story.
Yeah,
so
it's crazy. So
maybe we could do Epstein Fridays or something. I don't know.
Epstein Fridays.
Okay, catch you all later. Bye.